Hi. It's been a long time since my last video, I think maybe a year or more, and I was on the verge of giving up on creating content, as one might say. What a terrible word, content. My plan was simple, to focus on work. I was and still am immersed in fascinating projects, and some of you are aware, some not. But in the last almost 20 years, dear God, 20 years, I have been working on very interesting large-scale projects, and it started way back in my professor's office on the projects like Maitsail, Expo Shanghai, Shenzhen Airport. But then I went on my own to work on projects like the Bloomberg Building, the Kuwait International Airport, Shah Zedek Medical Center, the Las Vegas Sphere. So I thought I'll simply double down on that, right? But then something shifted and I decided to return to this online dimension, to begin again. And what better way to start this new chapter than with one of my favorite stories. And this story isn't about architecture, not directly at least. It's a human story, but give me a few minutes and I'll weave it back into the architecture, to detail, to craftsmanship, and to the people, culture, and traditions that honor those things. And more personally, the inspiration behind why I do anything. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. A story first, and this one is about a politician. Now, I don't think much about politicians, like most people, I suppose, in both senses of that sentence. Yet, one of the most inspiring figures of my youth was, in fact, a politician, though he likely wouldn't have appreciated being called that. Plato once said that a nation should be led by philosophers, but it's rare for a prime minister of a country to hold a PhD in philosophy from a prestigious German university, nonetheless. Now, some context. It's late 1990s in Serbia. Some wars behind, some ahead. The culture is as flamboyant as the clothes, and here is this man, leading demonstrations against the government. And there I am, my teenage self, somewhere in that crowd, among countless young teenagers and young adults who grew up in the shadow of war-torn Yugoslavia, tired of having their youth stolen from them. So we marched on the streets. Now, fast forward a few years later, on that day, October 5th, 2000, the day of the big revolution, there I was again, 18 years old, inhaling tear gas, running towards something uncertain, something hopeful, something people usually call the future. Now, we ended an era that day, the era of Slobodan Milošević, and soon after this man, Dr. Zoran Djindjic, became the prime minister. Now, for some of us, he was a symbol of hope, a reason to believe again. So we felt liberated, optimistic. And in 2002, 2 years later, he began traveling across Serbia, speaking directly to people, talking to them about problems and wanting to improve. And one of his stops was this city of Jagodina, home to a once mighty cable factory. So a place that had buzzed with life, machines, and purpose. So, but now it stood still, slumped, and the people unplugged. So as he approached the factory gates, he saw a large clock. But like the factory, it had stopped, frozen in time. So he paused and with a smile said, "I'm not going in, I'm going back." 1 year later, in March 2003, he was assassinated. 3 years after that, in April 2006, I graduated from the Faculty of Architecture, and by December of that year, I had left Serbia for good. But that moment, those words, they stayed with me. I'm not going in. I'm going back. I understand you have problems with the market, he said. I understand that the machines are old and in need of repair. Skillful people are hard to find. I understand there are a million issues that we have to cope with and struggle with. because so many businesses struggle in a small country bombed unfairly by the entire NATO just 3 years prior, with the goal to make us fall to our knees? I understand, he said. But what's stopping you from making this clock work? What is stopping you from making this clock work? When I walk through the streets of quiet Spanish village or along the ancient paths of Kyoto, I notice things. A house, a bench, a corner where two wooden beams meet perfectly. So I see care, I see dedication, I feel something, a quiet reverence, as if I've stumbled upon a hidden symphony or an unseen painting. So in those details I see this fight of ours, right? A fight against entropy, a fight at this fragile boundary between chaos and order. Some of these details deserve one of those museum benches placed right in front of them so that people can stop, sit and truly see them, to honor the unknown hands that crafted them, the hands that took up their tools even on days they didn't feel like it and said, "No, today I fixed the clock." Now, that is what this story is about. That's who this story is about. For me, it begins with a fascination, with craftsmanship, with connections, with the small joints, with dedication. It's what I strive to understand, to create. But it doesn't end there. This fascination then expands to people, to cultures that care deeply about these details, whether it's reflected in an old Japanese home or in a farmer's humble cottage in rural Australia. As I learned about the good and the bad and the ugly, I realized that what truly inspires me are the people who quietly do what they can, the ones who fix their clock and care for their corner of the world. Very often away from the lights, right, in the shadows, unnoticed. They remind me to try to do the same, to bring joy and hopefully inspiration to the next person who passes by my home or watches my video or listens to my music. Dostoevsky's famous phrase used to confuse me a lot for a very long time. "Beauty will save the world," he said. But as of lately I can see it. If something does save the world, Dostoevsky was definitely onto something. Beauty probably is one of the best candidates. Beauty is not superficial, or at least not the one I'm talking about. It's the moment where entropy is momentarily paused. Chaos is held at bay by order and intention, the very human intent to create. So what is my point? Stop and smell the flowers? We all heard those types of sayings 1,000 times in our lives. But one day, if you're lucky, one of them just clicks. It pierces through the skin and you feel it, you understand it. So next time you pass by a piece of architecture, a simple bench, a well-crafted corner, stop, look, appreciate it. It might just make your day better and your life better. And who knows, it might even inspire you to bring a little beauty into someone else's life. One small act at a time. 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour at a time. I'm on your team. Stay free.